So, on our last couple of shows, I was talking with Amy Loudermilk, who is a talent acquisition guru and branding expert, about everything you need to know about your personal branding, job search, and resumes. So, on today's show, we will be talking about mastering that interview. I'm your host, Ms. Entertainment. Let's talk about it. This is your girl, Ms. Entertainment. I am your host for Let's Talk About It. So, welcome to my world. We're getting ready to start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. I am T.S. Edwards, aka Ms. Entertainment, author of The Adventures of Hildy and Carlos, and your host for Let's Talk About It. For those that has missed, I've been talking with Miss Amy Loudermilk, a talent acquisition guru and personal branding expert, on competing in our new virtual world. So we've talked about personal branding, resume, and job search. And Amy gave us some great insights on all of that. So tonight, we will be talking about mastering the interview. So before we get started, Amy, I need you to come on.
Hello.
There you go. Please introduce yourself.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I am Amy Loudermilk, and as Teresa said, I am in talent acquisition. I've been helping both people and companies find that right blend of skills and talent with the right organization for over 20 years now, and love having people helping people make connections and hopefully end up with a lifelong career they love. You notice I look a little different tonight, right?
Huh?
Do you notice that I look a little bit different tonight than normal?
You're still beautiful.
Thank you so much. But my background has changed just a little bit. And I wanted people to just understand that tonight, for the first time, I'm actually practicing a little bit of what we've been preaching about, talking about working in a virtual world. And so if my background looks a little bit different, you've been following myself and Ms. Entertainment here as we go through our journey. I'm actually digital nomad tonight. So bear with us. I hope this is going to be fantastic, but I thought it would be a cool switch up to show people it can be done.
Gotcha. But let's go ahead and kick this thing off.
Absolutely.
So what are some things we need to prepare for an interview? When we went through that, got the resume together, we got the call back. So what do we need to do in preparation for that interview to land that job?
Is the job description. We talked in part 2 that when you apply for a job, don't just throw spaghetti at the wall and hope it sticks. Apply for jobs that are relevant to your skill. So when you get the call about that job, you want to be able to pull that job description, right? So that you know what skills and qualities they're looking for, so that you are prepared to talk about your equivalent skills and abilities that relate to that job. You want to be prepared to have your resume with you. Your resume is not just for an employer to look at and talk about. That resume is also for you. And it is your reference point to remind you of the skills and abilities and the things that you have done in order to bring success to your past roles. Also, talk about your current position. Also, be prepared to talk about what does an ideal role look for. Again, you're going to want to talk about your experience in the past, your background that is relevant to that particular position.
Now, before we get to talking to the interview, what are the things we need to prepare for the interview?
All of these things are the things you want to get prepared. You want to make sure you have all of that fresh in your mind and ready for you. You want to be prepared with the reasons that you left last positions. And so practice those things, especially if you left a position in maybe not so great style, right? Because those things happen. And so how do you want to talk about that? You want to just have all of your talking points prepared and in front of you. And those are the things that I'm kind of speaking to. And lastly, you want to have done your research again about the company and the culture, about compensation, your value in the workforce, and you want to be prepared with all that data so that once you get that call and you're in the interview, you can speak to it and talk through it.
Okay. So, well, you sat down, you're ready. I got my talking points. I'm ready for it. Now, the first thing they always ask you is, tell me something about yourself. I mean, what
Absolutely.
do you, what do you say where you're not just rambling on, but yet you want to give them a picture, but you don't want to be there all day, talking about just you.
Absolutely. So one of the things that you want to do is this is think of it kind of as the expanded um, objective. So in the resume portion, we talked about having a very clear, succinct objective. And so you want to give a summary about yourself that speaks to that. And it doesn't need to be more than 2 or 3 sentences because you're absolutely correct, Ms. Entertainment. You do not want to go on and really jump ahead of the questions they may have for the interview itself. But you do want to give kind of a quick summary, kind of like the intro I gave of myself, right? You don't need to know every job that I've had or every company I've worked for, but you need to know that I kind of know what I'm talking about, and I've been doing this for 20 years. And I love to help people. And so you want to try to keep it short and sweet.
Okay. You answered my next one because I was like, how much do you share? You don't want to, I know maybe like a time frame or a time, and then, what do you share? So you said basically just piggyback off your objective, and that's where your talking points come from.
Correct. Think of it as kind of the expanded elevator pitch, right?
Okay.
Think about maybe, 30 seconds to 1 minute. That's 3 or 4 sentences that kind of summarizes yourself. And people also ask this question of me a lot. Is it okay to say something personal about myself? Do I need to say I'm a mother, or do I need to say that I'm a part-time yoga instructor, or whatever the case may be? It's absolutely okay to throw in some of your personal interest as well.
Okay. That's good. That's a good idea. So you're getting ready for that interview and you're practicing on your elevator speech all at the same time.
Absolutely.
Are there any buzzwords we should say just to sound, confident in what we're talking about that we should use, or just be confident in the posture and just go for it?
So when it comes to buzzwords, I'm going to say action words. Remember your action words. I created, designed, developed, I led, I managed. We talked about this in our part 2 series and our resume writing. And again, this is why you see the pattern of wanting to have your resume with you, right? As your reference point, because you can go back to those words that you used. And again, Indeed.com actually has an article, and it's a list of 139 action verbs. And that's a wonderful list. You want to speak to action, right? Because the company wants to know what you can do. And also, a buzzword on my side of the table, and candidates know it as well, is kind of behavioral interview questions, right? Give me a situation, a task, an action, and the result. And so those are the things that you really want to focus on when you're talking about buzzwords, right? And that's where those action words come in as well to really help lead you down that path.
Another question that they hit you right from the start is, so why are you interested in this job? How do you, especially if you're out of work and you don't want to say because I need a job, what's a good way of saying that, without coming off desperate?
Well, it's really the truth, right? Transparency is great. I don't think that you need to speak particular to, well, I'm out of work right now. But instead, think about the way that you can turn that and say, you know what, I was recently impacted. I'm very anxious to get back into the workforce. This particular position is appealing to me because A, B, C. And again, in your preparedness for this interview, you pulled your research on the company. I love your culture. I love that you just acquired 3 companies in Latin America. And I speak fluid Spanish and would love to use that skill in my current job, and I don't have the capacity to do that. So, what are the nuggets that you found in your research that really speak to why you do want to work for them? Why would you like that particular role? Are you trying to gain more experience? Are you trying to advance yourself? Um, it's absolutely 100% to be transparent, but it's the way that you position it. So instead of saying, well, I'm out of work and I need a job, say, well, I was impacted and I'm anxious to get back in.
I like that. I like that. Another one of those.
Semantics, right?
Yes, yes, it's all about perspective. Another one of those questions they hit you with. So, tell me about your greatest strengths. So, how do you I guess you don't come off sounding arrogant, and just rambling on. But is there like a time period? Is you pick one thing, or what are your recommendations?
So, what I would tell you in terms of strengths is you want to be true to yourself. And again, you want to be honest about your skills and abilities. But one way to enhance your strengths that you speak to is to use your data. And again, under preparedness, we have pulled the metrics in our resume writing. We've pulled our metrics. So use that information to speak to your strengths and say, I'm a strong project manager, and here's why. I led a team of 20 people working on the development of this particular product. I worked cross-functionally with 5 different teams in the business. We achieved the goal 30 days ahead of plan. Use those data points to kind of verify, right,
Mm-hmm.
your strengths, but be honest about it, right? Don't really oversell yourself, but you want to sell yourself. And the quickest way to do that is use those data points.
With saying like your soft skills, like I'm a people person, would that qualify as a actual strength? Because it's a soft skill, but I think it's a definite good skill because not everybody has that.
You bring up a fantastic point because we hear that a lot as recruiters and talent acquisition professionals from our hiring managers, where they say, I've got a lot of technical and functional capability on my team, but I don't have anyone on my team that can speak at every level of the organization. Or I need someone who is strong in presentation skills or in speaking and relationship building. And those soft skills do become really critical in the job. And so absolutely, you're going to want to speak to that if that is your particular strength. Not everyone is a people person. Not everyone is good at project management or time management. And if that's something you're not good at, put that in your weakness column and then be prepared to speak to it. But use your data to verify the strengths that you do feel good about. Throw in some of those soft skills 100%.
So you talk about weakness because that's normally the next question.
That's
So
a big
tell
hard
me
one, right?
something. Your one of your weaknesses. So how do you come off where you're not sounding like you don't know what you're doing? You know, what do you say to that?
So I think when you talk about what your weakness is, um, we all have them. And to say that you don't, I mean, that's just a crock, right? Everybody's going to see right through that because you cannot be great at everything. If you did, you would probably be running your own company and not in a job search to begin with, right? So, what I think about when, and I advise people to do when they're speaking about a weakness is what are you doing to overcome that weakness, right? So for example, I said time management, right? Not everyone's time management, and they're not good at it. So maybe you're taking a course and say, you know what, my weakness is really time management. Um, my strength is that I'm very focused and driven, but that leads me into my weakness, which is time management, because I kind of get wrapped up in what I'm doing. I lose track of time. But here's how I'm overcoming that. I took a course on time management, prioritizing your day. I set a timer on my desk for 10 minutes to check email. I set it for another 5 minutes to check voicemails. I only check voicemail and email twice a day because it distracts me. I spend an hour on this, then I get up, I take a 5-minute walk, I'm refreshed, I come back, I focus on the next task. I make lists. So show those kind of things that you're doing that shows you recognize what the weakness is and that you're already taking action to try to correct some of those.
That's a good idea. I didn't think of that. So you just you talk about what you're weak in, but yet how you're overcoming it, and that's why you flipping it because you're conscious of it, and you let them know
Absolutely.
you're conscious of it and what you're doing to make it better. Cool.
Absolutely. Because a weakness is never going to get better, right? If you're not taking some type of action
True.
about it. It's just like if you think about a weak muscle, that muscle is never going to, tighten up and get strong if you're not working it and
True.
exercising it and training it. And so companies want to see that, right? It shows that you are self aware, it shows that you're taking initiative, right? And those, speaking to soft skills, those are things that you're saying with your words that speak to soft skills.
Got you. So another question that I hear a lot is, okay, so where do you see yourself in 5 years? So how do you actually how can you answer that? Because you don't know, and then it's like you can't say, well, I'm gonna have your job. You can't say that. So how
And
do
you
you,
can't say on a boat in the Bahamas, you know.
yeah, sipping my margarita, that's pretty much where I would like to be, but okay.
Absolutely. So that is a tough one. Um, it's funny, it's an oldie but a goodie, right? Because it kind of was around for a really long time. It kind of phased out, and like everything else, it's kind of coming back. Um, so I think answer it honestly. If your goal is to climb that ladder, to move into a leadership role, is it to become the CEO of the like whatever it is, be true to yourself and be honest about it. Because you know what? If you want to be in leadership and this position is never going to have the possibility of getting you there, and that's your goal is to get there within 5 years, it's not going to take you there. Better to know it now and skip out on this job at the interview phase than to continue forward, get in the job, and then you're kind of stuck, right? Because you just sometimes need to cut it and move on, right? You just need to cut bait and keep going because it's not the right job for you. And the interview is not just about the employer finding out about you, it's you finding out about them as well. So I know we're going to talk about that probably a little bit later because I know it's something that's on the tip of my tongue,
Yep.
and it's probably on the tip of yours as well. But so I'll save that, right? But you want to take advantage of your time and not make it all about speaking about yourself.
Well, let's go ahead and start talking because that was my next question to roll right into it because
Do it.
they're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them, and you want to make sure that they or this potential boss is going to be a good fit for you. So, what would be those questions you would ask so you can get a feel of what type of leadership or boss he is, and if that's going to fit
Yep.
your mindset? Because one thing you don't want to do is go into uh, some mess, and then have a miserable time.
Well, I'm going to break this kind of in two parts,
Okay.
because you brought up something I had not given a lot of thought to, but I think it's important and I want to make sure that I address it. But in part two of our series, we talked about when you start applying for jobs, think about what is important to you in that next role. And so I want you to get the list out. And if you're a new and joining us for the first time tonight, welcome. I'm going to catch you right up to speed. You should have a list of why you are looking for a new role. What is motivating you? Are you looking for better work-life balance? Are you looking for more growth and mobility in your current role? Are you looking to relocate? Are you looking to change your task and maybe pivot into a whole new arena? You should have that list in front of you, and you should be applying for jobs at companies that, at least for what they put out there to the world via the internet, looks like it aligns with that. So the questions you want to ask are going to be related to that. So if you want better work-life balance and that's important to you, you need to know what your commute is and ask them, what are the normal working hours of this role, right? Does it offer flexible hours? Is there telecommute options? I know that we've kind of slanted our talks a little bit more towards remote work. What are the resources and tools that are available, or am I going to need to pay out of my pocket? What is reimbursable? So ask those type of things. Also, if you're starting to, uh, want to look at benefits and maybe family planning, or expanding your family, you're looking at kids that are going off to college or parents that are aging, you want to ask questions about the benefits. If that's what's important to you, you want to ask those questions about what does the company offer from that perspective. If growth is important to you, you want to ask about, okay, what is the career progression from this particular role? What does the career progression look like? What's the time framing of that? And then ask yourself, does that align with where I'm trying to go? And ask about what kind of resources the company offers in terms of training and development to help you get there. Now, that leads me into the second part of your question when you're talking directly to a hiring manager, because that gives you a little different audience than if you're talking to a recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you an idea as a recruiter of what a typical day might look like, but that is in no way going to be the exact same picture that a hiring manager is going to paint. So ask them, what does a typical day look like? Um, what would my first week look like, my first month, my first 3 months? Maybe you're going to be taking on project work, but you're going to need to ramp up. Ask them, what would be the ramp up time for a normal new hire coming into this position? What are your expectations? And then in terms of management style, which you spoke to, which is so important,
Mm-hmm.
right? People leave jobs a lot of times because of
Because of
their
the boss.
management.
Mm-hmm.
Ask them, ask them. So if you're a person that needs a little bit more instruction, right? You're a list checker. You like to make a list and you like to check things off. You are going to want a manager that has a very clear communication style, that checks in with you on a periodic basis. You may be a person that learns best by just jumping in and taking off. And if that is the case, then maybe you want a manager who's more hands off and gives you a little bit more autonomy. And so ask them kind of, what is their normal management style? How often do they have one-on-ones? How often do they provide feedback? Do they wait for twice a year, right? Mid-year and end of year reviews? Or do they have weekly or bi-weekly or even a monthly one-on-one check-in with their current employees on their team? The other thing is, and again, we'll talk about this, I think, a little bit further down. It's one of my kind of wrap-up questions is, if you're kind of unsure and you don't feel like you've gotten a clear picture, it's okay to ask to talk to somebody that's doing the job today.
Oh. Okay.
Hopefully, someone that's doing the job today may be part of your interview panel. But if they aren't, it's okay to say, you know what, I'd really like to speak to somebody on your team just as get it informational. Could you set up a 10 or 15-minute conversation with someone? And then you can ask them about that particular manager and their style.
Good idea. Okay. That's not bad.
I got a couple of little nuggets tonight, a couple of nuggets, I hope.
Got some nuggets there. So let's go to the most important thing, my money. How do
Money,
you answer that
money.
money question? Because it's like, well, what are you expecting? Because how my mindset is, they're always trying to lowball you because they're trying to save that money. But how do you make sure you get your money's worth and finding out what is that range? Is that something that they should share?
So hopefully they will share it, but not all companies have that kind of transparency
Mhm.
and authenticity. Okay. And not all recruiters know the exact compensation. It may be a range. This could be a brand new role, and the company's really trying to find out where it fits in the market, especially if we're talking about smaller companies where there's like one person that's doing talent acquisition and compensation and benefits and HR. They may just not have the bandwidth to do a lot of market research to find out where that position should be. Hopefully that is a very rare case. But I would like to try to kind of cover for our viewers every end of the spectrum, right? So when it comes to talking about money, you need to have done your research. You need to know where you are in the market. And that's why interviewing is always a great thing, even if it's a company you may not be super thrilled about. It may be a job you're not super thrilled about, but um, mock interviewing with friends and family, it's important because it helps you with those awkward conversations,
Okay.
right? And when you have open conversations with talent acquisition professionals and people in the workplace, it helps you find your value because you may not know exactly what you're worth. But do, again, your research that we talked about in part 2 about compensation. Go to your Glassdoor, go to salary.com, especially if you're thinking about relocating and especially if you're looking at remote work, because remote workers will often be paid per hour and at a much higher compensation rate because they're not paying taxes. Sometimes they're not paying benefits for you and other things that may not be available. So that's why those questions that what to ask during the interview are really important. And also your research is important. It is okay to ask them if they have a range. But what I do not personally like is when I ask you, hey, what are your expectations around compensation? And you answer that with a question.
Mhm.
Well, what's your range? It's absolutely okay. You should do it. I expect it. It's just a personal little pet peeve. I like people that say, I would like to be between 120 and 140 because I know that I could go work at, Google, Amazon, FedEx and make this much money. Um, and it's also okay to say, I would like between 120 and 140, but I'm open and flexible because this role is something that really interests me. This company is on my target list of companies to work for, over the course of my career. This offers me so much flexibility and autonomy. I might be willing to go a little lower. And a lot of times a good recruiter will ask you, what is your basement? Sometimes you can escape answering with a hard number, but at least give your basement and know what your basement is. And the one thing I cannot stress enough, know what your basement is. And if the range is not there, don't sell yourself short just to fit in and try to get into that role. Own your worth, hold and cut bait. Go on to the next position that is going to pay you and get you in that range.
Okay. Know your worth and stand by it. Okay. So
Absolutely.
everything is going great. The manager sounds like he's going to be awesome to work for. The company is great. And you really, really, really want this job. So how do you close that interview and seal that deal?
So most interviews are pretty structured, right? Whether it's a phone screen with somebody in HR, talent acquisition, maybe even an agency that might be calling and screening you and then sending you over to a client. It's pretty much going to talk about why are you looking? What are you looking for? What are your expectations around relocation, compensation? Kind of what's any kind of educational or certification requirements, and then talk about really skills and abilities. And so they will normally close that up, and a strong talent acquisition team and a strong talent acquisition partner should close that interview by asking, do you have any questions? That's generally your cue that you're getting towards the end of the interview. And then they should give you next steps. Whether they do or don't, make sure that you have asked your questions that you want to ask. Make sure that you have asked them what will be the next point of follow-up and what is an appropriate time to follow up with you if I don't hear from you. So for example, I'm going to say, hey, Ms. Entertainment, thank you so much for interviewing today for our production role. I'm going to pass your resume on to the hiring manager. I'm going to give them about a week to review that. I'm going to be continuing to screen candidates. We're going to wrap all that up, and we should have a decision on next round interviews. So our process will be a second round of interviews with the hiring manager or the hiring team. From there, you'll go into a third round and final interview with the director of the group, and we'll make a decision. I think that time frame should be about 1 month. Does that work with your time frame of job search? And I'm setting up for you, right, what those next steps are. If you're not getting that, ask for it. It's
Okay.
absolutely okay to say, you know what, Amy, what are the next steps? What can I expect to happen now? Because none of us want to go into the abyss, right? We've interviewed, we're excited, and then we sit and we sit and we sit.
Then we wait.
And so ask that exactly, you wait and wait. And every time the phone rings, you're like, and you're like, it's my mom again. And I really want
Get
it
off
to
my
be,
phone.
this company. So yeah, exactly. And so it is absolutely acceptable to say, what are the next steps and when can I expect to hear from you again? And if you say, you know what, I'm going to call you, Ms. Entertainment, in 2 weeks, you say, great. If I don't hear from you in 2 weeks, is it okay for me to give you a call? Is it
Uh,
okay for me to circle back with you? And then do that. But what you can't do is start calling every week,
okay.
especially if the expectation has been set. These are the next steps. Don't start following up on day 2. Okay. Wait till the time period comes and then do your follow up.
Okay. It's just follow what they say do, and then don't go blowing them up.
Absolutely. Because you can be eager, right? And it's great to be zealous and to be excited about working for a company, but it's different to be desperate,
Yes. So you went
and we
through
don't want to
final.
cross into that zone.
Nah, because then you're not gonna get a call. Um, so you seal that interview. Well, at least you feel like that. What are your thoughts on the follow up? Thank you, even to your recruiter or talent acquisition person said thank
Always
you, or even for your hiring manager. Because what if they don't give that to you? What do? Their email or
ask,
okay,
ask, ask. Always ask. My thought is always ask, because if you don't ask, the answer's always no.
Yeah.
It's
You won't
always
know until
no.
you ask.
Harm, absolutely. So what harm is there in saying, you know what, Tom Smith, I have really enjoyed our conversation today. I feel really excited about this role, and I think that I could impact your organization, and this could be a good next fit for me. I'd really like to, follow up. Can I get your contact information? And all they can say is, you know what, no, I'll have my recruiter, Amy, follow up with you as a next step. And if you don't know who Amy is, say, great, could I have Amy's information to follow up with her directly if I haven't heard something in a week or two?
And
Ask,
if they don't give
plain
you,
and simple.
if they don't give you
Ask
that,
for
then
it.
you know this is not looking good.
I hate to lean that way, but it certainly could be an indicator that maybe, things didn't go that well. Maybe the person's just in a hurry. And quite honestly, you might be just dealing with somebody that's new at either hiring, whether that's the recruiter or hiring manager or somebody in the business. They may be new in their role, right? And they just don't really know. But hiring managers generally, they love to get thank yous, but they don't love to get all the after, right?
Mhm.
All the what's going on, what's going on, what's going on.
Okay. So anything else that you want to share them who might have not touched on?
The biggest thing about it is really, like we talked about, just being prepared. Make sure that you are in a comfortable space. One thing that we talked about was remote work. And aside from, my screen taking a tumble, I think most people that are joining us would be pretty hard pressed to find out that I'm sitting in my 18-foot travel trailer in the mountains in North Georgia, working. But hopefully it's been a fairly quiet experience. You can see I have a nice, pretty neutral background. There's nothing that's busy and distracting behind me. You're not seeing a bed that's unmade. I'm not sitting in my bed doing the interview, right? So just think about those kind of things. Kind of tuck yourself away in a quiet corner if you can. Now, right, we know that honestly, we're living in a world of COVID. Everything's done remote now. Everything's done through video now. Dogs bark, kids come into the room, somebody rings the doorbell, another phone rings. Those kind of things kind of happen. And I think people give you a lot of grace. So I would just remind everybody, also give that grace to the person on the other side, right? Know that that recruiter, that hiring manager, they're dealing with those same struggles. Um, People think that a lot of times when they don't get information that people are withholding, right? We want to internalize it. We want to think, well, they know and they're just not telling me, especially about salary. But there are several cases over my life of almost 25 years now of recruiting that I've not necessarily known my salary going into initial phone conversations and screenings and interviews with candidates. So give people grace. If you have questions, ask.
Okay.
Because again, if you don't ask, you're always going to get a no.
And if anyone has any questions, go ahead on. This is definitely the time to ask. Like you said, if you want to know
Absolutely. Let's
something,
hear them.
ask. And give us a brief recap of some of the important things or tips that we need to remember about just nailing that interview and things that we should do and shouldn't do. Did you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So you want to definitely be prepared. Yeah, you definitely want to be prepared. Like I said, you want to have your resume, you want to have information about the company. You want to be able to speak to the qualities that they're looking for, tie that back to the relevant experience that you have. as well. You definitely want to ask those important questions that talk about work-life balance benefits, the things that are important to you in your daily job. Like you spoke, Ms. Entertainment, about being a people person. One of the questions you're going to want to ask is, how large is the team I'm going to be on? Because if you're a team of one, you're a people person. Do you think you would thrive in that role?
No.
So yeah, exactly, right? So definitely, definitely keep those things. Don't forget to follow up, because it is, even in a virtual world, to get that email to just say thank you for your time, thank you for speaking to me about this role. And again, if you feel like you want a little more clarity, jot those questions down and email those as part of your follow-up.
Okay. So we got a question. Why are
Yay!
recruiters
All
reluctant
right.
to release salary ranges, and will recruiters release that? Why will they, are they, I guess, can they release that info, and why some recruiters are reluctant to let you know what are the ranges?
I knew it tonight. And so, what I would say to compensation, you're definitely not going to want to miss part 4 of this series, where we talk about is a low end and a high end. And generally, that lower end is kind of market entry. So it may be somebody that doesn't quite have all the boxes checked that meet all of the requirements of the position, but there's someone that can stretch into that position. And then the high end is going to be somebody who is a top performer, somebody that would likely promote up and out of that role within 6 months. Now, the thing about those two ends of the spectrum is that is subjective to the company, not you. Okay. So we may think that we're a hypo and we're up here and we want that high dollar because we think we're promotable in 6 months. And the company may say, you know what, you've never worked in this industry. You've not worked on a team of this size. You've not worked at this scale. We're going to put you somewhere. Most folks try to put you somewhere in the middle. Most jobs are actually budgeted somewhere in the middle. And I will say that most recruiters, I think, are more reluctant to share when we think we are offering less than you would take. And so we do want to hear from you first what you're interested in, because if I know my job's paying 90 and you say 120 and I know I can't get there, that may honestly limit the amount of time I spend on the phone with you, how long the interview goes. It may let me know that we're just not in the same ballpark. Now, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to tell my candidates that. And I'll tell you, I think every good recruiter, let's say we've got the flip of that. You say you're expecting 90,000, and I know that my position starts at 120 and that the market is paying 120. I'm going to tell you, you know what, you valued yourself a little bit too low. This is what I'm going to patient down at 110 to 120 or at 120. How do you feel about that? Right? I think any good recruiter should always level you up if you have undervalued yourself by some case. But oftentimes recruiters are more reluctant to share when we think your skills and abilities and your expectations are going to be higher than what we can offer.
So you mean to tell me I might be cheating myself?
Hey, you know what? I mean, it really is a little cat and mouse, right? Of kind of Tom and Jerry, kind of boop, 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 boop. And again, I think that's why it's so important that our recruiters and talent acquisition professionals represent with authenticity and transparency when possible. But again, we don't always have the privilege of doing that. Again, sometimes it's a new position and we just want to see where it's going to be in the market. We want to know what a particular experience level candidate, right? So maybe we're thinking, we're not sure if this role should be a senior director or director. We need to get an idea of where the market is. And so we're going to talk to several people we feel would be and see what their ranges are, right? And we're using that intel to help us as well.
Okay. Well, thank you, Miss Vanessa, for that question. I need to make sure if they start hesitating, I'm like,
Yes.
oh, I'm lowballing myself.
Well, that's why I said that research is so critical. Now, that doesn't mean that just because it says that, the range or that most people in that particular market with this many years of experience doing that job are going to make 120. It doesn't mean that you're going to be, or that that's going to be your offer. But again, where you can give and take because you've already done your assessment. What's important to me is it working for this company and driving 4 hours a day and not getting my kids to soccer and not getting dinner on the table and never seeing my husband or my partner or never being able to play softball myself or dance class or whatever it is in your particular life that you value. If you're willing to trade time for money, then you've already done that assessment when you got yourself prepared to start applying for jobs. So you'll know.
Yeah, and I think going back to talking about the resume and job search, just to, like you said before, jot down that stuff that you applied for and put all those notes on there so you're not caught off guard. It's like, and I've done it, especially when I was out of work. I was like, I'm just applying, and it's like somebody called me back. It's like, so in other words, make sure you have your research done and ready and available so you can take a look at it just to make sure that you're at least on par,
Absolutely. And again, I just want to reiterate this because you just touched on it. We talked about it in part 2. I want to make it available and reiterate it for our folks that are listening tonight and joining us tonight is when you are applying for a job, nothing is worse and kind of ruins you. I don't want to say it ruins your credibility, but there's nothing worse as a talent acquisition professional than calling someone about a job and they go, "You're with what company? What job is this again?" It is much easier to say, "Thank you so much for the call. I'm really excited to talk about this role with you, but I actually applied for 2 positions with your company. Can you tell me if this is for the business consultant role or the project manager?" And it's a different conversation, right?
Right.
I mean, can you hear how that sounds very different than going, "What role is this again?" And I'm thinking, well, how many jobs did you apply for? How many companies did you apply for?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, desperate times call for desperate measures, but you're right.
Absolutely. And I get it. I absolutely get it. But you know what? When you're applying, it takes 2 seconds to just jot down on a notepad, on this date, I applied for this position at this company. And again, one of the other things that we talked about that maybe bears repeating, don't apply for 100 jobs at the same company. Keep it to 3 or 4 that are the most relevant to your experience and what you want to be doing.
Okay. I can't wait till our last one where we can talk about once you get in, and then if you want to move around, does that play a part too when you
What do you do next?
applying for jobs? Cool. Any
Absolutely.
closing remarks?
Just, have fun with it. Try not to take it too serious because we all know that looking for a new job can be very stressful It can be a full-time job. And I say this every single time, more than anything else, give yourself patience, give yourself grace, but also give that company gracious, blah, 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 grace and patience as well, because you're one person looking for a call from one, they're one talking to many, right? And it's going to take some time to get through it. So just know going in that very few job searches result in immediate hire. Give yourself at least 90 days of just head down focused, and then another 90 to get hired in.
It is definitely a full-time job looking for a job. I found that out.
It can be.
It can
Can
be.
be for sure. But I hope that if you're new joining and watching us tonight, I really hope you'll go back and watch series 1 and part 2 as well, because we talk about how to use the system when you're applying for jobs to your advantage, so that those jobs are coming to you versus you going to them.
I just want to say thank you as always. I appreciate your time and your expertise, giving us all those great nuggets. And I want to thank all our attendees. Stay abreast to the next event. We're going to be talking about negotiating that salary. So keep a lookout for on the website, www.tsedwardsauthor.com. And everyone stay safe. Until the next time, let's talk about it. Salute. That was another great show. I want to thank Ms. Amy Loudermilk, which is a talent acquisition guru and branding expert. She's always giving us some great tips and tools for our toolbox. So if you have any questions, hit me up at info@terradoneent.com. That's info@terradoneent.com, and I will definitely hit you back. Stay abreast for our next parts. Until next time, salute.